Hi. In my previous video, I basically showed how we can build multi-agent applications using Waylay Studio. And in that video, I have covered the application itself. And then I went into great length to explain not only how we do it, but basically what actually means to build, in general sense, the assistant applications using the LLMs. I also covered things like roles or assistant prompts, where basically provide you a role or a storytelling to the assistant bot in relation to what that thing can do, it can answer. I also explained a little bit more about tools that assistant bot can make use of. And then I actually went to great length to explain that is also tools in themselves can be an API call, can be a flow, can be a causal rule, can be a machine learning model, and that all these answers that are actually sent back to the calling applications are again coming back through the LLM, go through the tokenizer, and typically they are sent back as a markdown in any given language back to the calling application. I also went to explain what we mean by a session, why is that important in relation to the short memory, and how previous questions and answers can influence the responses that are sending back to the calling application. Now, this time I will cover other things, such as let's imagine that now that we have created the application that can monitor in the calling system, I would like to add information about the weather in a given location, because that's also might be important in relation to understanding what is happening in a given, for instance, data center. Obviously, then one first thing can think of, okay, let me just add it as additional tools and just add weather information into existing application. There are some places where it's not actually desired to do that. First of all, it can be that another agent from another company is giving you this information, like an agenting marketplace. And other thing is that over time, if you build way too many tools inside one assistant bot, it just gets really, really cluttered. And your basic instructions are pretty long because each of these are different capabilities. So it can get a little bit too much, if you like. So this time what I will do is to basically create two different agentic applications. One of them which can answer existing things like give me the test for a given HVAC or air cooling system, create me inventory, create me work order. But notice already that one, it's kind of a busy because it already talks about inventories and work orders and HVACs. And the other one, which is going to be really specifically focused on the weather itself. Then again, I can actually talk about quite a few different things. What is the current weather? What is the forecast? What is the weather in general? And we see already that we might have actually quite few API calls to achieve that. For instance, if I'm interested in the current weather, I can, for instance, take the API from one company and say something like, or giving the location London, what's the weather in that location? Current weather, that would be a temperature, pressure, humidity, and so forth and so forth. On the other hand, if I'm interested in the weather forecast, I might use another API, and this time from another company which requires an input longitude and latitude. We'll see later on how LLMs are actually capable of answering that or feeding the right input arguments into the APIs. And this time I'm looking for a weather forecast in another place. And this is what we're actually seeing here. Finally, I might be interested in a general information about the weather, but this time I actually can think of LLMs to provide me this information. Because let us not forget that LLMs themselves are trained on a lot of different things, including the general weather for a lot of different locations. So for instance, if I'm interested in the general weather in Paris in winter, I can create a system prompt which says you are the agent that can answer questions about the weather. And you know what's going to happen? It's going to answer that. So it's going to give me something like a very general information about the weather in a given location, for instance, in winter. Now, what I can do is to create all of that as a separate agentic application, and that's what I'm doing here. For instance, I have now 0 sessions, and if I say so again, what is the current weather in Paris? Well, it will take, so for instance, what we see here, we have had 3 different rules, and now I'm taking one API call which is about the um, current weather. So this is what I'm saying here. If I say what is going to be the weather in that location in next few days, then I will know that this time has to go through another API, go through the forecast, and give me that as well. So this is what's going to happen now. So in the next couple of days, this is what's going to happen. And it will also give me some summary of that response as well. Finally, if I'm looking at what is generally uh, weather there around this time, so again, LLM will be smart enough to know that I'm actually still talking about Paris, and it's going to actually do something else. We said during the late February and early March, this is a typical weather there. So see now that if I look into these sessions, that then use the general weather information to actually execute that. Okay, so this was one application. Let me remove this session because I would like to basically do some other things as well. And now let's imagine that we would like now to merge the application that was for the HVAC tests with an agent or application that was talking about the weather. Now there are two ways to think about it. One of them is that I still, if you like, want to be in control, given the question which agent is going to answer. There are sometimes places where you actually want to do that, and it's typically called the router. So now what I'm going to do, just for fun, I'm going to use the LLM itself as a router, as a kind of a regular expression thing. Why is that? Because it can actually understand from the context of the question what I'm talking about. So for instance, let's go straight here. What I mean by that? Let's take here this example. So I'm going to have a question. Show me all HX. Here I have a system prompt which says you are to determine if the question is about the weather. If yes, answer must be weather. If the question is about assets, your answer must be assets. Yeah? So that's all what it does. Now, in this condition here, I'm routing. I'm saying that if it's about weather, you are actually here have a state true. Now, the other thing is that if it's about the assets, this is this guy here. And due to that, I will be either calling one agent or the other one. Let's change the session so we have a test ABCE or test ABCD. Yeah? Now, if I run these things and say show me all HVACs, what's going to happen? It's going to fire one of these two agents. And if I look into the logs, it should actually list you all HVACs, meaning that this agent here should answer. Now I can actually look at here as well. Notice here there is a test ABC. It has answered my question, and this was then the answer in a markdown. So you see that the router actually worked. Now notice here I have 0 sessions about the weather. Now if I say now, what is now the weather in London, and I do the same thing, now it should fire the guy at the top because we are routing now the question. So this is, you see here, true. And now what you will see, there is a test ABC, which is about the weather in London. So hence we got an answer from another agent. Now this was, if you like, the router that actually then was delegating deterministically, if you like, which agent to answer. And there are places where you actually want to do that. Second thing I would like to note is that we actually made use of the session IDs, meaning that we wanted that agent to remember previous questions. Sometimes you want to do that, sometimes not.